Good morning guys, we're back at it again with another video. So we've got half the roof done, and you might be wondering where's the video on that? Well, I've got to do the other half still. So we've got one half done, and then we still got our sunroof on this side here. So I'm just waiting on the replacement eave trim piece from Versatube. Once they get that to me, I'll get it installed. Then we'll finish off the other half of the roof, and then the whole roof will be in one video. So in the meantime, what I can do is I can start working on installing the garage doors. And Hannah and I did this one yesterday. Ooh, yeah. There we go. Nice roll-up door. Pretty nice. That door looks really nice. Cleans everything up, obviously. We've got the other three to do, so I'm gonna start working on those today. All these doors are gonna have automatic openers, so it's gonna be mounted somewhere right here. You can probably see the sprocket on the end of the door drum there. So I'm gonna finish off mounting the 3 doors, then I can start working on the lifts for it. So what I'm installing here are the 2 angle brackets that go at the top of the track. So once we get these stood up, then the door, or the drum of the door is gonna be sitting on these things. I also have to make sure that the distance from the top of the track to that angle bracket is the same on both sides, just so that the door is gonna be sitting horizontally level. So they just bolt together nice and quickly, and then we can get them stood up against the jamb and secure them to the wall. And with a project like this, I've never installed a garage door, whether it be a roll-up or a standard style door. The first one took me at least 2 or 3 hours. After that, after I kind of got the method down and figured out exactly how it goes together, they only took about an hour to do. Now I can get the track stood up against the jamb there, and I'm just using a quick grip at the bottom just to hold it into place so that I can make sure that this track is nice and plumb. So having these tracks nice and plumb is obviously super important because the width of the door isn't going to change or anything like that. I did notice in this process that a couple of my jambs were just slightly out of plumb, but it's more important that, especially for these roll-up doors, that the tracks are nice and plumb. Once we've got it clamped to the wall, I'm just using some tech screws or some self-tapping steel screws that came with the kit, just to screw them right to the jambs there. So now that the tracks are in place, I can double check my measurement across the top just to make sure I'm exactly where I want for the door to actually fit in there. I'm using some big, thick, self-tapping steel screws to attach that angle bracket to the header of the door. Ideally, this would probably be welded to that header, and since I don't have a welder, I can't do that, but it might be something that I do in the future just to make sure that it's not going to loosen up over time, but I think the screws should be fine. Looks can certainly be deceiving. These doors weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300 pounds each, so moving them around by myself is a little bit tricky. And on the one side of the door where the lift is going to be attached to the wall, I have to attach this big sprocket so that we can basically attach a chain to it that is going to go to the lift. And then also on either end of the door, there's these brackets that come with the kit, and then we just slide those over the over the door end there. Now I had to come up with a clever way of trying to get the doors up onto the lift. So the tractor, definitely very handy, and I was able to just lift the door up, and then we can just slide it or roll it directly right onto the front of the lift there. Now the question is, how do you get a door that is more than 11 feet through an 11-foot opening? So it just takes some time and a little bit of careful navigation with the scissor lift here just to get it into the opening, and then we can, boom, just lift it right up into place. And getting this situated was a little bit kind of tricky just because it was hard to see exactly where the ends of the doors were. Might be easier to see on camera, but where I'm at up there was a little bit tricky, so it took me a little bit of time just to kind of get it centered in the door opening there. But once we got it centered, then we can lower the lift down and start bolting it right to that angle bracket. Again, these doors are quite heavy, so doing this by myself was a little bit tricky. I did have Hannah's help on the first one, but I thought I should be able to do these myself because I thought I would definitely need somebody else's help. But hey, I was able to do it. And now we can bolt the door to that angle bracket and remove any of that foam that's going to be getting in my way. And now with the door in place, yes, I'm working on another one. We can get it, I have to get it centered in the opening so that there's equal distance on either side of the track. So I think I positioned the tracks an inch wider than the actual length of the door. So there's about a ½ inch clearance on either side. So we just want to make sure that it's nice and centered there so that it's not going to be rubbing up against the track during any of the movement of the door. Now, one of the trickiest parts of installing this is that I've got to get basically the bottom of the door at 12 o'clock. So once I get it to 12 o'clock, I there's set screws on either side of the door just to hold basically the pipe that's going through it into place. So once I get the set screws in, then I essentially have to roll the door or rotate the door 1.5 times, and then that starts to engage the spring inside of it. And once that's engaged, it becomes a little bit tricky because it wants to start spinning back the other way. So this process here was a little bit tricky because I had to remove all the wrapping around the door and then hold it so that it didn't spin back around. But I was certainly able to do it by myself. So this was a pretty cool achievement for being able to install these garage doors myself. And then once I get the door into the track, there's a couple of stops that go at the top there so that the door can't roll back up into itself there and disengage from the track. And then once we got her in place, then we can just pull her on down and get the rest of the hardware installed. Now, installing the openers, what I much would have preferred to do is to actually weld up a bracket and weld it to the actual structure of the building. Since I don't have a welder or anything like that right now, I thought the next best thing would be to mount it to some 3/4 inch plywood. So I just attached the 3/4 inch plywood to the framing of the building, and that'll give me a solid surface to screw this door to. So there's a chain that goes around, basically, obviously the door, and then to the motor of the lift there. And I just used essentially used some lag screws there just to hold it into place. And obviously it's really important to get this lift nice and plumb and level, obviously for the correct operation using the chain. And what's really nice is that on one side of the lift where the actual the sprocket is that you can shift it, a few inches one way or a few inches the other way, just to make sure that the chain is going to be perfectly straight up and down, and it's not going to be rotating at an angle, because that will certainly wear the chain a lot quicker, and then it can also screw the motor up over time. So then what's really nice with these doors is that I can insert a chain through the top here, and I can also use the door if there's no electricity or anything like that, and I can just hoist it by using the chain. All right guys, we're making tons of progress here. We got all the doors done, we got all the openers installed. Next step is I'm gonna install the partition wall that I'm gonna be putting in here. That is gonna separate kind of like the main garage area from where I want my shop area. And then I'm gonna start wiring up all the lights, wire up all the garage openers, and get this thing buttoned up because I wanna do all that stuff while I have the lift. And then in the future, as funds allow, we're gonna insulate basically the shop area, get all kinds of stuff installed in there, plywood covering the entire thing. So I don't want to do that just yet, but I do want to get the wall in and some of these things buttoned up, and then we're going to be good to go. All right guys, thanks so much for watching. Catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon. Peace.